unveiling the hypocrisy of anti-American rhetoric. In a striking paradox, the phrase, "fighting America by day, dreaming of a U.S. visa by night," has become more than a jest. It's a glaring reality. This is the absurd, repetitive cycle of individuals who loudly proclaim their patriotism, while secretly clamoring to enter the very nation they denounce as a decaying empire. At the heart of the United Nations headquarters, where global representatives are expected to embody diplomatic civility, a former Chinese diplomat took the stage to accuse the United States of human rights violations. His grievance: the U.S. has made it difficult for him and his colleagues to obtain visas for medical treatment, education, and leisure in America. That diplomat is Geng Shuang, a familiar face from China's foreign ministry press briefings. Once a vocal critic of the U.S. for disrupting global order, interfering in China's internal affairs, and fabricating lies about Xinjiang and Hong Kong, Geng now finds himself frustrated, unable to easily set foot in the country he labeled the root of moral decay. This raises a critical question. Is the so-called anti-American stance merely a cheap propaganda stunt? And do China's leaders truly believe the narratives they peddle? Before we dive into analysis, we invite our viewers to like and subscribe to WorldView Today for the sharpest takes on global events. On April 25, 2025, at the United Nations Committee on Relations with the Host Country, Geng Shuang, former Deputy Permanent Representative of China to the UN, delivered a scathing critique. He accused the U.S. of restricting freedom of movement and obstructing medical needs for Chinese diplomats, arguing that Washington is unfit to host the UN by blocking visas and hindering Beijing officials' access to American soil. Within minutes, China's social media platform Weibo erupted. Far from rallying behind Geng, Chinese netizens unleashed a torrent of mockery, sarcasm, and outrage at the blatant hypocrisy. You bash America all day, but now you're upset they won't let you vacation there? China's healthcare system is supposedly world-class. Why not stay and get treated? Your daughter's studying in New York? Have you criticized that yet? Each comment was a piercing blow to the carefully crafted anti-America facade China's leadership has cultivated for over a decade. The truth is undeniable. China's elite no longer bother hiding their desires. They want access to America. They need America. They trust American education, healthcare, and legal systems more than the ones they oversee. This is no coincidence. Since December 2020, the U.S. State Department has slashed the validity of B-1, B-2 visas for Chinese Communist Party members and their immediate families from 10 years to just 1 month. The reason? Clear and uncompromising: to protect the U.S. from hostile influence by a Beijing that aggressively pushes propaganda, political interference, and destabilization within American borders through covert means. The U.S. blacklist of banned individuals is constantly updated, targeting Chinese officials linked to human rights abuses in Xinjiang and Hong Kong, as well as those involved in suppressing religious freedoms, independent labor unions, journalists, and dissidents. Ironically, the very officials who enforce these crackdowns are the ones scrambling to enter the U.S., as if fleeing the consequences of their own policies. Let's call it what it is: naked hypocrisy. On one hand, they preach patriotism and warn of America's sinister imperialist plots. On the other, they file visa applications, buy properties in San Jose, send their children to Ivy League schools, and dream of a peaceful retirement in California. Beijing's propaganda machine once taught that America is a nation on the brink of collapse, a spreader of the virus of democracy, and an exploiter of developing nations through debt traps. Yet, from 2020 to 2020, in just 3 months, May to July 2023, at least 4 senior Chinese officials passed away on the soil of the enemy they vilified. Tokyo, Sydney, Boston, California, these are not Chinese cities, nor are they in Cuba, North Korea, or Iran, Beijing's so-called ideal allies. The death of Dr. Dai Jianping, former director of Beijing's Tiantan Hospital, dealt a devastating blow to public trust. As head of a major Chinese hospital, he chose California for treatment and his final days. The public demanded answers. Why? Did he not trust the hospital he ran? No response came. No one dared to respond. Two prominent figures of China's wolf warrior diplomacy, Geng Shuang and Hua Chunying, epitomize this farce. Geng, a Tufts University alumnus, fiercely opposes U.S. interference in China's internal affairs. Yet, when asked if China would allow American experts to investigate COVID-19's origins, he resorted to cheap whataboutism. H1N1, HIV, the financial crisis, all came from America, didn't they? The international community swiftly debunked his claims. H1N1 and HIV did not originate in the U.S., and a financial crisis isn't a virus to investigate. More damningly, netizens exposed that Geng's daughter attends high school in New York. As one comment put it, anti-Americanism is his job. Sending his kid to America is his real life. Then there's Hua Chunying, head of the Foreign Ministry's Information Department, who once likened China's foreign policy to a mighty lion king. She famously asked, "Why can foreigners use Chinese social media, but Chinese citizens can't use Twitter or Facebook?" Her own people called it self-slapping. In May 2019, a whistleblower revealed Hua's family owns a private home, not a rental, in San Jose, California, where her daughter studies. A year later, in 2021, Hua denied forced labor in Xinjiang, using comparative images to deflect criticism. Western media quickly exposed her deception. The photos she cited were of American prisoners from the 1960s, not black slaves as she claimed. But a far more alarming statistic overshadows these anecdotes. According to a 2024 U.S. government report, 74.5% of daughters of Chinese officials at the ministerial level, or above, hold U.S. green cards or citizenship. For their grandchildren, the figure exceeds 90%. While Beijing wages a propaganda war urging citizens to resist America, beware of America, don't dream of America, its own leaders are frantically securing U.S. citizenship for their heirs. This isn't just chasing the American dream. It's a strategic exodus from the political system they run. When U.S. Representative Linda Wu stood at the UN and declared in fluent Mandarin, "China says one thing and does another," the room fell silent. Not out of shock, but because no one could refute her. Beijing likely didn't anticipate such a sharp counterattack. America using their own language to expose their duplicity before the world. No metaphors, no subtleties. Just a direct, unflinching call-out of every contradictory action, policy, and lie. Take the ongoing U.S.-China trade war. On April 23, 2025, China's UN representative convened an informal Security Council meeting, accusing the U.S. of abusing tariffs to manipulate global trade and undermining trust among developing nations. Linda Wu's response was devastatingly concise. The world doesn't judge you by your words. It judges you by your actions in the international system. It was a cold, precise, and irrefutable rebuttal. In reality, Beijing continues to funnel massive subsidies to state-owned enterprises, force technology transfers from foreign firms, manipulate its currency, and exploit international financial institutions for its own gain, all while preaching global cooperation, fair trade, and mutual development. The U.S., though often accused of unilateralism, openly announces its tariffs, actions, and warnings. Meanwhile, China quietly floods African, South Asian, and Eastern European markets with cheap goods to crush local industries, then secures control of infrastructure, ports, airports, power plants, through predatory loans from the China Development Bank or Export-Import Bank of China. Beijing calls it the Belt and Road Initiative. Indebted nations call it poison with strings attached. When China appealed for global support in its unfair trade war with America, no one answered. Not because the world loves the U.S., but because no one trusts China. Germany, Europe's economic powerhouse, cautiously removed Huawei from its 5G networks. France, traditionally amicable with China, is tightening scrutiny of Beijing's investments in sensitive sectors like biotech, defense, and AI. India, once lured by promises of a new economic corridor, imposed heavy tariffs and banned hundreds of Chinese apps after border clashes, with the Modi government vowing to minimize dependence on China across its supply chain. In Southeast Asia, Malaysia and Indonesia are investigating Chinese-funded infrastructure projects for corruption and debt trap concerns. Even Laos and Cambodia, long considered Beijing's backyard, are quietly restructuring finances to reduce reliance on Chinese loans. At home, China grapples with capital flight, a collapsing property market, record youth unemployment, and 7 consecutive quarters of declining domestic consumption. China needs America more than ever. Yet, the paradox is stark. The more they need the U.S., the less they can admit it. Acknowledging this would collapse their domestic propaganda machine. So, they proclaim, the American empire is crumbling. But their children attend Harvard. They boast, we have the world's best health care. But they die in California hospitals. They demand, Chinese people must stand proud and never bow to America. But they secure U.S. citizenship for their heirs. The real question is, what do they truly believe in? America or China? If they believed in China's model, why do they meet their end in America? If Chinese education is world-class, why are their children the first to board flights to the U.S.? Anti-Americanism is a mandatory slogan. But trusting America, that's their true behavior. This contradiction is unraveling the mask Beijing has worn for decades. Since the U.S.-China trade war began in 2018, campaigns like Revive National Spirit, Self-Reliance, and Boost Domestic Consumption to Escape U.S. Dependence have been elevated to national policy. Yet, years later, the public discovered that campaign leaders own U.S. homes, boycott foreign goods while using iPhone Pro Maxes, and preach anti-Americanism while carrying U.S. green cards. Why does such brazen hypocrisy go unpunished? Because China's propaganda isn't for the elite, it's for the masses. Phrases like, resist America to the end, and surpass America through self-reliance are drilled into schools, the military, and state media, where questioning is forbidden. But among the leadership, the rules differ. They're not expected to live by their words. Instead, they're encouraged to exploit the authoritarian system for personal gain, even if it means funneling wealth, children, and trust to the U.S. Nothing illustrates this better than the princelings, China's elite offspring, flocking to America. Li Xiaoming, son of former Vice Premier Li Langqing, studied at Stanford. Deng Keji, grandson of Deng Xiaoping, studied in the U.S. before launching a venture capital firm in California. According to a 2024 FBI report, over 6,000 children and grandchildren of senior Chinese officials reside long-term in states like New York, Illinois, Texas, and California, with legal residency or dual citizenship. China's leaders know the future lies not in slogans, but in places with rule of law, quality healthcare, global education, and transparent finance. Tragically, that place is not China. This reality is eroding public trust. Not social control, Beijing's grip remains ironclad, but faith in the system. On platforms like Weibo, Bilibili, and Zhihu, posts exposing the hypocrisy of Red Wolf warriors spread rapidly despite censorship. The more the regime suppresses, the angrier the public grows. No one wants to be a pawn in a rigged game. People are asking, if America's so bad, why not send your kids to North Korea? If Chinese healthcare is top tier, why do leaders die in Tokyo, Sydney, or Boston? If the American empire is collapsing, why beg for U.S. visas? This isn't just sarcasm, it's an ideological collapse. The fabricated consensus is leaking, drop by drop, from the mouths of the people. When hypocrisy is exposed, power becomes raw, stripped of its moral veneer. It's no longer for the people. It's a cold, utilitarian tool to ensure the elite's safe exit. No one articulated this better than Linda Wu at the UN. When she switched to Mandarin mid-speech to declare, "China says one thing, does another," the room froze. Not because the truth was unknown, but because it was finally spoken aloud, in the language of the accused. Since then, Beijing has struggled to rally international support. Smaller nations are wary, not of America, but of being duped again by China's empty promises. From Africa to Southeast Asia, Latin America to Eastern Europe, Belt and Road projects are stalled, scrutinized, or audited. The U.S. doesn't need military might or sanctions to counter China. It only needs to expose the hypocrisy. The world is familiar with propaganda, but a nation that champions patriotism while quietly emigrating its elite abroad isn't propagandizing. It's committing ideological suicide. A society is only strong when its leaders stand with the people. But when they prioritize foreign homes, U.S. education, and California healthcare, while demanding the masses resist America with outdated slogans, that system will crumble from within. The ultimate question isn't for China's leaders, it's for the world. If a government refuses to live, die, study, or heal alongside its people, who do they represent? If this story resonates, please leave a comment, share, and subscribe to WorldView Today. We'll continue delivering unfiltered perspectives from the global stage.